First, I want to speak specifically to this situation, right? So I think Offset, of course, is trauma dumping, right? Because he had Cardi B, he fumbled it or fumbled her. And I was going to say fumbled the bag since he's trying to get her back. But anyways, with that being said, because he fumbled her, he has no choice but to project. So to me, it's a form of projection where he's saying, because it didn't work out for me, because I was a low down, dirty ass dog that constantly cheated and then got held accountable eventually for my actions, he then turned around and said, so therefore you are not ready to get married. Marriage is not for anybody and everybody, but of course it's not if you're not willing to do the work to be in the marriage in the first place. But this actually is interesting to me because it brings a question I want to ask in a second. And so with that being said, Jay-Z, on the other hand, who's still married, because you don't hear Jay-Z coming out saying, hey, marriage isn't for anybody after his, because he grew from his time that he cheated that resulted in eliminating and so forth. So he grew, or they had some type of arrangement to say, hey, this is an empire. You can't rap about building empires and you don't have your queen next to you because you fumbled your queen or your queen decided to leave or whatever the case may be. So like I said, I think this is projection. I do agree with Nick and everybody else on the panel that this, to me, this is part of the problem is that young folks will take this as gospel because for whatever reason, we uphold rappers as freaking role models and they're not. And that's the first thing we need to recognize, that these rappers aren't role models. So stop taking this stuff for gospel. But that brings me to this question I would like to ask you guys. And that's, I feel that part of this is because men, if you have not been in a monogamous relationship, men cannot then turn around and get married and expect that switch to flip and say, okay, now I'm monogamous. So my question to the men on the panel, is this a result of him not actually engaging in previous relationship styles where he was monogamous?
I'll take it a step further, actually. I'm glad you said that because I wanted to chime in with this. The same way that culture creates things, right? So let's say, for example, it sexualizes everyone. So women are open to being sexualized, and also men who are already maybe sexualized become even more sexualized, right? Maybe it just speaks to his belief that men cannot be monogamous, right? Maybe that's the other slice of the conversation, right? For him, obviously, with the access to women that he has, or maybe just because of who he is, he can see that from that lens. But there's a lot of men out here now who maybe one woman ain't gonna cut it. There's a conversation to be had. We've had it before in regards to whether or not monogamy is what men really want, or if we negotiate, or if we don't, we just kind of accept it. And if ultimately marriage is like the ultimate form of monogamy, if he's making the case that most men are not monogamous and therefore marriages do not work out, then I can see where he's coming from. Now, I would still push back on that because to me, the marriage part is to be negotiated. Like this idea that men have to do marriage only one way, I think is the other misnomer, right? And in fact, he's probably the worst person to deliver that message because from what we understand, they had an open enough relationship to where he could have had other women involved in the dynamics because she was open like that. Now, whether or not he wanted to do that on his own and not share, I don't know the particulars, but what I'm saying is most men would be okay with their significant partner who allowed them to kind of have other women. So my point is that I think there is a conversation to be had if he's making the case that he believes that most men, especially successful men, right, in particular, aren't really monogamous, then maybe marriage is a logical conclusion for him to draw that maybe most men should not get into, especially then when you add in the potential financial pitfall. So I'm not, you know what, it's interesting. If he's going there, I can kind of see where he's coming from because a lot of us do like new ass.
Right. And I want to, pivot back to what you brought up, Nick. And I've seen this in a lot of conversations, especially in the Black community. We have this apex fallacy, like, because we pedestalize our celebrities, entertainers, rappers, athletes. And when they bring up something like this, in this particular case, where it's a high profile guy, very successful, a lot of access, a lot to lose, and he says something like, he's not talking to you, Mr. $50,000 a year guy. He's not talking. Marriage is going to be great for you for the most part. So we have to stop self-inserting. Oh yeah, I can identify with Offset because I live like that. It's a risk for me too. I don't want to split, lose half my stuff too. So we got to really be careful in these conversations, especially with entertainers and celebrity figures, to figure out, look, are they talking to me? Is this something that would realistically happen to me or not? And in most cases, we're just really talking about regular, everyday people that these things happen to. So we got to be aware of the apex fallacy.
So what I hear you guys saying, what I think I hear you guys saying is, first, everybody's not going to be in that situation, and that this man. So first, to Nick's point, if he's not a monogamous guy, then you're trying to put a round peg into a square hole or whatever, right? And so S&M's point presupposes that everybody is supposed to be square, right? Presupposes that square would be the norm. However, maybe square isn't the norm, and maybe that conformity has to be worked in over time. You shove something in there, you scrape off the sides till it barely gets in. Yeah, maybe that's what happens in our dating culture or whatever. Maybe it's the idea of how we execute marriage. With going to Delvin's point of, it's all about how you're bringing and how you're presenting into it. I would say I think that it's a blend. I think that the message is you really have to negotiate your partnership for who you are. And I think that it's funny the point that Delvin made. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying to figure it out. This Offset, he's gone through his marriage thing. He tried doing a big show with her. Like a lot of guys, he's going through the things he's seen other people try. It's not working out. He's trying to figure it out.